Tarde, sejam todos bem-vindos de volta.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome back. We would like to repeat that at the entrance of this theater, you have simultaneous interpretation devices for English into Portuguese and vice versa. Now we will continue our international seminar, Artificial Intelligence, Democracy and Elections. Once again, we would like to ask you to switch off your cell phones or put it in vibe. Continuing our event this afternoon, we would like to introduce the second panel that will tackle on algorithm polarization and challenges in electoral context. Is Her Excellency, our Acting Minister Edilene Lobo, will be the chair for this panel. Also in this panel, we will have the member of the European Union Parliament and the co-author of Artificial Intelligence Act, Dragos Tudorache, that participates online. Mr. Secretary of Digital Policies, Mr. João Branch.
Senhora pesquisadora do Democracy Reporting International,
Beatriz Saad, researcher of Democracy International. And our head of public policy at WhatsApp in Brazil, Ms. Daniela Silva. So we turn the floor to the chair of our panel, our acting minister of the Superior Electoral Court, Ms. Edilene Lobo. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity of being part of this panel together with authorities that are joining us and even one of the participants in the virtual means. And this topic that makes us gather together in this event and a partnership with the Superior Court with the Getúlio Vargas Foundation. I would like to greet Mr. Dragos Tudorache, the Secretary of Digital Policies of the Presidency of the Republic, João Branch, Master and Researcher Beatriz Saad, and the expert in strategic communications, head of public policies of WhatsApp in Brazil, Daniela Silva. Also, I would like to welcome especially each one here present in this theater and the people that are together with us in virtual means. The topic of this panel is algorithm polarization and challenges in electoral context. It is impossible to start tackling on this subject without remembering that song from our famous Caetano Veloso singing Full Angels. And our life seems to be going towards such an algorithm with the neurons of silicon bringing another rhythm to life, being able to distort, fragment, and exponentialize extremisms. When algorithms of recommendation of contents could even make our choices easier, showing options for those products of choice, it is a fact, as we have seen in the past elections throughout the world, in very big surveys, and especially those made by the experts on this panel, they allow the manipulation, the falsehood of reality, contributing for disinform, force, and discourage the participation in decision-making processes, placing core questions to the electoral debate and other debates that involve the different decision-making processes. We will center this panel in the understanding that we are living in a different moment with a different way of communication, which the public space is not the one that we used to know. We are talking about a public space that is virtual now, where the different contents are included, and the algorithms, this neural forms that activate artificial intelligence, they have a very important role. It is about this topic that the authorities that are here with us today are studying, and we will start by listening our Euro representative that will have the floor for 20 minutes, already saying that His Excellency will have to leave because he have a commitment at 5:30. So, Mr. Tudorak, you have the floor.
Well, good afternoon to you. I hope you can see me and hear me. Let me start, first of all, by thanking you for the invitation. It's an honor to be part of this exquisite lineup of speakers, and also congratulations for choosing this topic. It is certainly one of the most important debates that one could have when we think of the impact that these new technologies have on our societies and on our democracies. But what I find particularly inspiring when it comes to the angle, the perspective that you are taking in Brazil, and I saw it actually in some other countries in Latin America, is the fact that this debate is very much driven by the judiciary. And I find that to be a particularly interesting way of discussing the topic, and I would like to see that happening in other jurisdictions, in other democracies around the world. Anyway, speaking of its importance, it is impossible to ignore the fact that most democracies, it happens that most democracies around the world are going through elections this year. I think more than half of people living in democratic countries in Europe are going to the polls this year. Certainly we as Europeans are voting this year. As you know, the US is voting this year. India is, as we speak, going through votes, and many others. And it's not only because of this that the debate is relevant. It is relevant also because our democracies are in dire straits. And I think we have to be mature enough to admit it. There are very deep divisions in our societies, in our democracies. And it's not something that, unfortunately, is an isolated phenomenon, but in fact happens in virtually all countries, all democracies around the world. And certainly, we cannot blame technology for these divisions. First and foremost, we have to blame ourselves. First, maybe the first ones to be blamed are us as politicians. At least I, as a politician, take responsibility first for that, because we are the ones that need to be particularly careful about the social contract that lies at the heart of our societies. And this social contract is, in many of our countries, in many of our democracies, at peril, because there is a deeper and deeper polarization. There is a deeper and broader gap between politicians and electors. We can always think and blame economic woes. We can think and blame the pandemic. We can think and blame geopolitics, but ultimately we have to care for the social contract. We have to care for this divide that takes place in our societies. And again, if we also are to turn philosophical, we also have to think of human nature. We as humans have always tried to manipulate each other. There were always people who were hiding the truth. There were always people who were trying to influence others using whatever means they had at their disposal. So many of the topics that we discussed today when it comes to the impact of technology on democracy, disinformation, fake news, these are things that have been with us since the dawn of mankind. There have always been disinformation. There has always been one, again, political faction trying to capitalize on another. But where indeed technology plays a role, and now I come to the topic of this conversation, where technology does play a role, and we have to again tackle this reality, is the fact that it accelerates to a level that we have never seen before in the history of mankind. It accelerates many of these otherwise natural phenomena in our societies, things that, again, as I said, either have to do with human nature or with other factors in our democracies, whether they're economical, societal, political, or geopolitical. And if we look at the role that technology plays, first and foremost, technology these days accelerates these reflexes that, as I said earlier, lie at the heart of human nature. So whatever disinformation has taken place in the past, now technology, social media accelerates that to a rate where it takes a completely different impact, and it has a completely different impact on democracy, on electoral processes, and on the state of health of our democracies. Second, what technology does is it connects. And it connects those fringes in societies and those extremist views that, again, have always been there, because people have always had extreme views. There have always been fringes and fringe elements in our communities, but they were never connected to the point and to the extent where they are connected today because of technology, or using technology, using platforms, using social media. So it's this ability to connect that creates a critical mass of fringe views or extremist views that polarizes more and with a greater impact effect than disinformation has ever had an impact in times before, when technology was not there to play that role. Third, technology also feeds these views, these extreme views, feeds them constantly, feeds them at a point where people that might even start as moderate believers in some theory or another, but the way algorithms work, they feed those views to the point where they no longer remain moderate. They grow deeper and deeper, they go deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole into those echo chambers where they only hear what further reinforces their starting point, their initial ideas or initial thoughts, again to the point where truth is no longer distinguishable from lie, where science is no longer trusted or believed, and where generally we no longer trust anything that goes outside of that echo chamber that reinforces what we believe and what we think. So if we think of all these three elements, the accelerating, the connecting, and the feeding of these sentiments, then clearly technology, very much driven since, as was presented, I was responsible in the European Parliament for the AI legislation that was just adopted. As a matter of fact, it was formally, finally adopted today. Again, technology driven by AI has been therefore playing this enormous role, and therefore the question is, what do we do about it? Of course, so far, the choice we've had was to say, listen, this is a nascent technology, we are still in a pioneering mode, and we relied more or less on the self-discipline of the companies themselves, on their own moral codes. And at best, we try to accompany that process with general principles, with codes of conduct, with voluntary commitment, with forms that we believed until today, and now I'm speaking with a European Union hat. This was our thinking behind adopting the set of regulations that we have adopted during this mandate. Recognizing that, again, until this point, we believe that it was so important to leave this new industrial revolution free of the barriers of regulation, allowing it to grow, to innovate, to stimulate our economies. And therefore, we thought that regulation was not necessary, that whatever negative effects the impact of technology had on our societies and our democracies was something that could be curtailed, could be addressed solely by talking to companies and again relying on their own moral compass to do the right things. Well, particularly the behavior of social media platforms has taught us over the last couple of years here in Europe that that is not sufficient. We tried some years ago to have a code of conduct. We had a code of conduct in place with all platforms of social media related to disinformation, fake news. But having reviewed it year after year, we realized that the actual impact that we wanted to achieve was not there. And not only that the impact was not there, but those negative impacts that we could see some years ago, in the meantime, had amplified to the point where, as I was saying at the beginning, our societies are and our democracies are in dire need of some new approaches, some clear guidance. Political drive at the beginning of this political cycle back in 2019 to start with adopting one after the other a series of legislative measures meant to finally bring again some order into the interaction between digital technologies, not only AI but generally digital services, and our societies. We started with looking at the structure of our markets and the impact of digital tech companies in the market space. That's why we had the Digital Markets Act. Then we looked at the responsibilities of social media platforms, and not only social media platforms, but generally online platforms. And we looked at their responsibility for the content that they host, moving away from the theory that a platform is only a conduit for transactions between the provider of content and those that are consuming that content, whatever the content might be. We realized, and therefore addressed by legislation, the fact that these platforms are not just conduits, that they bear a responsibility for themselves in the way they take certain content and present it further down the line to those that are consuming that content, because of the way they take preference over certain content that tends to be the one that is most consumed, regardless of whether that content was true or false, regardless whether that content was legal or illegal. And therefore, again, through this legislation, we have put at the very heart of the system the idea of trust and the idea of responsibility for these platforms, for the companies that are hosting these services, including social media, a responsibility for the content that they host, for the content that they distribute. And now we are in the process of starting to see the first effects of this legislation, because implementation started some months ago. And with all of the social media platforms, the European Commission is now in a very active dialogue, particularly looking at the elections that are taking place this year, as I said at the beginning, and trying to bring that sense of responsibility in the way they fulfill what is now a hard set of obligations encoded in law. And last but not least, of course, the AIR Act. The AIR Act, with which basically we are not only saying that the platforms of social media have a responsibility for the content, but we also look at the way algorithms are built from the very beginning by those providers that are developing either the underlying models on which platforms or other algorithms or other applications are being built, or the actual applications that are interacting directly with our citizens. It's important to note that what we do with the AI Act is not put regulations on all of the artificial intelligence. We recognize that there is a plethora of applications of AI that have nothing to do with our individual rights as citizens or with the more broader interests of society. And therefore, we consider that it is unnecessary to regulate that kind of AI that is only meant to optimize processes or manufacturing lines in our economies. And that is a good AI that we want to see thriving and developing in our economy. But we looked expressly with this legislation at the AI that does interact with our rights, that does interact with the broader interests of society. And we want that interaction to be one that is to the benefit of our citizens and their rights and to the benefit of society and not the other way around. That is why we introduced the idea of a risk-based approach to regulation. So looking at the risks that technology might bring, and now coming to the point of our discussion, in the list of concrete contexts in which AI can actually bring about risks, and therefore there is a responsibility for those developing algorithms in those areas, responsibilities linked to transparency, linked to explainability, and many others. So one of these contexts that we listed in the law as being in the area of high risk is indeed elections and democracy. And we did so, again, because we recognize that the use of AI algorithms in systems that are meant to influence our political opinions, that are meant to influence and shape public opinion in the context of the functioning of our democracies, then those algorithms, those applications have to be, again, accompanied by a higher degree of accountability for those that are either developing those systems or those that are putting them on the market. And as I was starting to say earlier, these obligations are linked to transparency for the data sets that are being used, to make sure that you know how these algorithms are trained, to make sure that they are not trained with biased data or data that can lead to discrimination or undue influence for those that are the ultimate consumers of those applications. Obligations linked to explainability, because you also want to make sure that there is no what we call engineering bias, i.e. bias that is introduced by those that are coding that algorithm themselves, whether it is deliberate or not. There is still an obligation to explain how those algorithms were instructed to function, how they were asked to optimize certain type of content versus others, because again, this is how you understand how an algorithm works, and this is how you understand whether that algorithm is meant or capable to exercise undue influence in the way it functions, or again, to optimize and accelerate certain type of content versus others. Ultimately, all of these obligations, and there are, of course, others, I will not go into the technical details of the law, but all of these obligations, all of this responsibility that we have now encoded in law are ultimately aimed to do one thing, which is to bring trust, to bring confidence that in that interaction, recognizing that this is an inevitable path, bringing this technology into our lives, into our economies, into our democracies is inevitable. It is part of our evolution and progress, and we cannot deny that. But while we do that, and while we cannot deny progress, you need trust. You need confidence. You need to build that important confidence for the benefit of our citizens, for the benefit of society. And we believe that that confidence can only be built if, again, our citizens understand how those algorithms work, that there is sufficient transparency, sufficient explainability, so that when they interact directly with an AI product and an application, they can rest assured that it is happening in an environment that brings their rights forward, and that makes sure that that application works to their benefit and not the other way around. But beyond legislation and this is where I would like to also close, beyond legislation and the responsibility that as policymakers we have had in making sure that we're bringing a set of rules that are going to accompany this digital transformation when it comes to the health of our democracies. There are some final elements that I want to put on the table for discussion that I also think are key to this debate. First, again, is this recognition of a higher level of care and responsibility that particularly us politicians, policymakers have around the world in every democracy when it comes to this phenomenon. It's not something that we can any longer ignore. We have to be prepared to take it head on, to recognize it, to admit it, and now I come to the second point, which is to explain it, to discuss it with our citizens, to organize ourselves and our society as much as we can around instruments, tools that are enforcing the resilience of society. Because ultimately, no matter how many rules, no matter how many fines, how many sanctions, how tough you may be in implementing legislation against platforms or those providing social media services, ultimately, it is the resilience of societies that are going to help our democracies survive in this new digital era. We have to learn to teach. We have to make sure that our citizens are, through their education and through how they understand themselves, their place in democracy and their responsibility in discerning truth from non-truth. Again, it is this resilience that, from my point of view, we can save the day, because it is the only way that we can make sure that our citizens, our voters, when they are going to interact with a video feed that is maybe AI generated or not, when they are going to read a piece of news that might be AI produced or not, that might be true or not, they have the critical thinking, they have the reflex of exercising critical judgment in verifying the information, in trying to see whether indeed it is true or untrue, regardless of, again, the way the providers themselves, the companies themselves, have fulfilled their obligations or not. And this leads me literally to the last point. Apart from, again, recognizing this responsibility and then educating and talking to our citizens, it is education. I think AI is challenging almost everything in our societies, in our economies, but the one thing that I believe is challenged the most is the way education is going to be done in the years to come, in the decades to come. There is going to be a decade driven by the AI revolution, because that changes fundamentally, from my point of view, how we educate children, how children acquire information, how they compound data, information, and how they store knowledge, and how they also play with the different feeds of information that comes to them in the process of learning. And that, for me, requires a very serious rethink of how education is being done. And that also leads to what I was saying earlier about resilient societies in the face of disinformation, in the face of this incredible challenge that new technologies bring to our societies and our democracies. I will stop here. Thank you very much for inviting me and for your patience. And I can still remain for some minutes around if there would be any questions. Thank you.
Muito obrigada ao senhor eurodeputado. De fato,
Thank you, Mr. Eurodeputee. Well, algorithms, in fact, put to world society, not only to Brazilian society, the need to have explainability and transparency, especially when we talk about algorithms that impact electoral processes. We must have knowledge and explanation of their development, their goals and purposes. Especially, it is important for us to discuss and The Euro representative points to this point very efficiently, that we must discuss, first of all, people, citizens, in the gravity center of democracies. Once again, we have heard today the word trust as the structuring factor of a society that is democratic, that wants to be free. We also heard, and it should be stressed, that citizens should tap into technology to be informed, to guide themselves, to get education and make free choices, and not the opposite, and not having technology mastering minds and hearts, manipulating people. We're going to listen to, with great joy, and I greet again the fortunate presence of Mr. João Brandt. He's the Secretary of Digital Policies of the Secretariat of Communication of the Presidency of the Republic and PhD in Science from the University of São Paulo. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Edilene Lobo. It's a pleasure to be with you. I greet Beatriz Araepi and Daniela Silva, in addition to the Euro representative with whom I had the opportunity to agree 98% of his speech. I'm going to start with the 2% that I have disagreed to him, and I think it helps us warm up our conversation. I believe that when we understand and we look to the information environment, we realize a change that is quite significant and took place over the past 15 years. What's happened over the past 15 years? Not only the organization of the information environment, as well as in the ensemble of society. I think there are two possible interpretations, roughly. The first, that we've had an expansion of the participation of society, direct citizen participation in public debate, and this has an inexorable natural consequence, which is this dimension of a loss of normative reference, of the fact objectiveness that you are moved by opinions and emotions. The other interpretation, I would say, is that this question is not inexorable or inevitable. It's, to a certain extent, it's being boosted, encouraged by logic and architecture of this information environment. And some people call me techno-determinists for making this information. Well, I still have a long way to be that. I think I should say there is a component in the way social media is organized. There is generated as a default by, as we call it, an infinite feedback loop. Sean Park from Facebook said that it created the greatest behaviorist experiment of our history, in which all of us are participants. Somehow we are benefited.
Nós passamos muito tempo nas redes sociais.
Part of us, we are very much present in social media because we seek things, but we are impaired or hurt socially and personally. There's this viewpoint that it is possible for you to keep the glass half full and keep with the half empty glass. I don't think we should come in and put as a reference an environment in which you have no social media, or an environment in which social media have no role of curatorship. I think it's key, the role of curatorship social media practice on the day-to-day. But I think we've had many researchers and scientists speaking towards that it is possible with appropriate and balanced adjustments, avoiding part of these negative externalities of this information environment.
Por onde eu acho que tem caminho, mas
também I'd like to say which path is. And from my place of speech, I'm a Secretary of Digital Policies at the Secretariat of Communications. So it's being set up to think about policies and regulation for the information environment. So facing disinformation and hate speech, and we think about protection and dissemination of information or reliable, trustworthy information. Part of this agenda has happened in the past year and a half from a set of information groups from the UN, from OECD, UNDP, that actually organize this integrity of information as a positive thing, the ability of providing this ecosystem, providing reliable, accurate, and consistent information to citizens. Why is this relevant in an environment that we are here at the Superior Electoral Court? I would like to thank for the invitation and Minister Angelina Lobo and Tatiana Beckett and the FGV Mário Grassi and Marco Rudiger. Because elections is a process that we live in Brazil every 4 years for each one of the instances or levels.
Em que é momento
específico. In practice, every 2 years. It's a specific moment for decision in which citizens manifest themselves and affirm their political will. But the understanding of the world, the reading they make of the world, it happens 24/7, all the time. This is clearer today than it has been in previous times. We have a social speeding up of the public debate that makes us today be able to say that we live in a permanent election environment. Thank goodness the Superior Electoral Court does not agree to that. If you did, well, you would have, you would be doomed if you have to deal with elections with no interruption. From the standpoint in terms of creating the public opinion, the opinion of voters on politicians and the opinions they make up for the exercise of vote, it happens 24/7 in a process over the past those 4 years. This leads to the need to look into the topic, not only in this electoral legislation, electoral implementation during the electoral period. The electoral code is from 1965, is that it? So at least since then, we have the idea that it is facts that are known, that are untruthful for candidates and parties are considered illegal during the electoral period. We don't have that outside the electoral period. We don't have fast justice as electoral periods, the regional courts, the Superior Court, to act upon effectively. What are the pathways that we must have? What is the agenda we're working on that we believe helps confront the negative externalities in the business model of platforms? We have 6 lines of work that I think somehow sum up our reasoning of ours over this point. First, dialoguing with the Member of Parliament. We believe on media education. We must prepare our society to be more resilient to face the problem on their day-to-day. This requires a set of actions for formal and informal education. We've been doing that along with the Ministry of Education and Culture, several entities of civil society that act. In this, I see Angela from Palavra Aberta, or Open Word, several entities that deal with this topic, and from our viewpoint, they point to a component that must leave from the regular syllabus established in Brazil. We have moved from the first collection of training of the Ministry of Education. I would have several initiatives that we are actually implementing with the Ministry of Education. I'd like to just mention that this is a fundamental agenda. Second fundamental agenda, public policies of sustainability of journalism. We must understand that journalism is a public interest activity that for a long time, post-war till 2010, has organized the public sphere, and it does the ability of interpretation of reality that journalism offers to society is something that no country can live without. And we have been working regularly decisions of public policy to ensure that journalism has strong sustainability mechanisms. To that, we connect another debate on regulation. I believe that Europe, when it discussed the Digital Services Act, when it approves us today, somehow that was being the final approval of the AI Act, it
para uma abordagem baseada em
signals to an approach that is risk-based that I think is relevant for our debate today on algorithms. Why? When I move, I start from the risk approach rather than trying to create a risk that off the bat will actually frame everyone and see what is best for society. I let things go, but I start understanding where this game, where certain arrangements and architectures are generating impact that is negative to fundamental rights. And then we have to understand the right to access information as a fundamental right is a right that has a dimension that is individual and collective. The right of consistent, reliable, and accurate information. Access is a right of society. We need to act to protect and promote. And I think that the best remedy for that is to deal with the process of assessment and attenuation of systemic risks. This is the main action or approach of the European DSA, and it helps us to ascertain the route as we move on. Rather than creating a previous control that does not recognize the market dynamics, or we're going to leave things too loose. The report that the member of parliament mentioned, it was that the attempts they made before the DSA, they consider insufficient to deal with the problem. This allows us to deal with some problems of algorithms. Here, I think that the very discussion on solutions for algorithms sometimes addresses, for example, something like we need to allow interoperability or detachment between what is selling ads and curatorship of ads in the relationship with those ads. And I wonder, is this generating an environment in which we're going to share more strongly a common reality of society, or will this generate more fragmentation? If it is to generate more fragmentation, this is the wrong path. If it is to generate a common environment which the perception of reality is shared by society as a whole, I believe this is the right track.
Pode contrapor, tá, mas você está querendo voltar para a televisão.
Somebody can, say, well, you want to go back to TV, concentrated media, a space in which you organize from a central curatorship. I don't think it's the best path. We have to understand the normative values that we want to protect. We want to protect pluralism, yes. Diversity, yes. But we also want to protect reliability, accuracy, and consistency of information as well. So these things do not need to be excluding and opposed. They might be together. And I think it is just through a regulation process from the dimension of risk that you can face that. Also, from our viewpoint, we must ensure that platforms are more accountable for the content they host, even if it's third parties. They cannot be totally responsible or accountable for that. Otherwise, you're going to create a backlash and because of legal actions. You cannot generate zero accountability as today is practically the case. Once this responsibility or accountability leads people to have permanent encouragement to dissemination of inflammatory contents, those that actually circulate more fastly, that generate more profit to platforms. No problem, the platforms willing to have profit. They're all welcome in Brazil, unlike countries that select them, but as long as they follow the Brazilian rules, and I think they should be willing to reduce 20% of their margin. Let me joke here.
Você proteja alguns valores normativos para o debate.
To actually protect some normative values for public debate, pluralism, reliability, and accuracy of information. This means that this accountability would generate some level. I'm not only dealing with legal accountability. Should be higher the more direct profit the platform has. Hence, the content they receive in actually driving or feeding, publicity content should be more responsibility or accountability of the platform. We should have an administrative accountability of doing things, a duty of acting, of doing, that must be, in my view, ensured by the legislation. We understand that platforms should be subject to this duty of care in protecting certain topics, racist facing or confrontation, those that are considered illegal in the offline environment, that should be addressed, dealt with as crimes, not legally, as preventive way or something that does not depend on a legal or judicial order. This will actually gamify the system, but you can do that for contents as confronting racism, protecting children and adolescents, preventing suicide and self-mutilation, and public health issues that are more severe, that are part of our code. These things could generate a balanced system from the regulatory standpoint. I said I had 6 proposals. I don't know about my timing. I don't want to take so much of your time. Let me go over briefly the other ones. I talked about media education, sustainability of journalism, and regulation. We have an agenda of expanding public communication that has been carried out from the IBC network with universities and federal institutes and also local universities. It seems to me that the strengthening of public communication must be in the core of every debate on the promotion of right to access information by society. Number 5 is the investments in science, technology, and innovation. Following R&D, we have been articulating with various institutions to increase and strengthen investment in research and development. There was an announcement at our event parallel to G20 that CNPq, Campus, FINEP, ICT, and IPEA, so all fostering institutions to actually increase investment in the area of disinformation and also international articulation, lastly. As item number 6, everything we're talking about here, there is in-house we have challenges and challenges that we may deal with as the European Union managed through the force of the union of the 28 countries to move forward in terms of regulation. Seems to me that the more we work on that in our international articulation, the stronger and more consistent will be the responses, even more protected of political idiosyncrasies, of the whims of governance that are incumbent. So what do we need to do and how can we be part of the international debate? The UN is currently discussing global principles to promote and protect the integrity of information. This has been conducted by Melissa from the Undersecretary General of Guterres. Guterres himself is promoting the Global Digital Compact, actually to be published at the UN General Assembly in September. He ensures on quality of information and AI. And we have several bilateral initiatives in Brazil with Germany, signed a protocol, a memorandum of understanding with UK, and worked with Mercosur in this, and finally G20. We pilot within the digital economy group this topic of information integrity is for the first time in the agenda of G20. And then it seems to me that we have 2 challenges deriving from that to make it remain on the agenda with power and life and practice with being able to move forward, even with countries with very different positionings as US, China, Russia, UK, Argentina, Brazil, and Saudi Arabia, and to have practical consequences. One of them that is key to us that we announced at the event that we had on the G20. And we're going to launch a global initiative for integrity of information on climate change. And the choice of this topic is to try to get experience from international action that jointly on a topic that is not creating so detached from the geopolitical standpoint, enabling us to combined UNESCO, UN, several countries, Chile has declared its intent, Scandinavian countries. We're going to invite all the countries with whom we have having relations to do this together and move forward in the experience of an international action on this agenda. Sorry, I've been too long, but I wanted to give you this landscape because the response to algorithm is not only what we can do to algorithms but also it depends on our ability to have a comprehensive approach in confronting disinformation. Thank you very much.
Não se tem dúvida que é fundamental nós discutirmos esse risco de os eleitores serem enganados. O ponto central aqui é possibilitar que a sociedade, que o eleitorado consiga se informar, separar a informação de desinformação. E parece-me que ao lado da palavra confiança, a outra que instrui e orienta a fala do Dr. João Brant é equilíbrio. E eu acrescentaria a educação para a vida digital, tendo em mente direitos fundamentais como essa bússola, como esse referencial. Eu tenho a honra de convidar a doutora Beatriz Saab, ela que é pesquisadora do Democracy Report International e apoia a equipe de democracia digital em projetos relacionados ao papel da mídia social nas eleições. É prazer recebê-la. Nós gostaríamos de...
It's a pleasure to receive her, and we would like to receive you, Dr. Beatriz Saab. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Minister Gilene Lobo, also Mr. João Brandt, Mr. Draco Studerak, that was present here with us. So I am part of the Democracy Report International, an organization which is a partner of our project Media and Democracy, together with FGV School of Communication, Media and Information. That is also sponsoring this event, and FGV Direito Rio. My presentation will focus a little bit on the report that we did in the past months, and we prepared this report analyzing the online risk for the next municipal elections. So it will tackle in many points that João mentioned, and I would like to be brief, but I also would like to thank the researchers and coordinators of the partner organizations without whom we wouldn't be able to do this report. I'm going to go briefly on our methodology and then focus on some of the potential risks and recommendations from some key stakeholders. As for our methodology, why do we focus a lot on a risk evaluation before any election? I'm going to refer to DRI and to be easier, I'm going to use the acronym. But this report is a tool for the civil society organizations and other researchers to evaluate the vulnerability of the electoral integrity of a country. We heard this morning about solutions, and every time we discuss about it, it's not with only one stakeholder, but several. And if we want to build public policies of quality and long-term programs that do not finish after the administration is over, we also need to check the needs and the risks. So the idea is that after this analysis, we monitor the elections and we can bring evidence for public debate. If we say that AI is a risk, we also have to confirm and understand the impact of this risk. That's why we do this evaluation before the elections. And during the political campaigns, we monitor the online debate. And to get to this point, we analyzed the political context of Brazil that you all know, and we mapped the vulnerabilities, and we talked with more than 15 organizations to understand the risks and also designed some recommendations for three main stakeholders that are electoral authorities, the digital platforms, and other organizations of civil society. When I'm talking about the latter, and here it's important to say, where am I talking from? I am part of an organization in civil society. We do research and surveys, so we want to bring evidence and impact. I also am talking about fact checkers, activists, advocates of human rights. which is a very important right of this equation of the solution when we want to create tools to protect the integrity of the information system. I'm going to mention also the risks that we have mapped for this election and how are we going to analyze them. There are three risk dimensions that we focus: the hate speech, disinformation, and political advertising. João provided a good panorama on these three things, special advertising, and going to what these risks are and what do we expect to see in the next election. As for hate speech, and here are not only new risks, but a continuation of what we have seen in our project during the monitoring process of digital platforms. The idea that hate speech usually is directed to specific vulnerable groups in society. So we are talking about women, people from the LGBTQ plus community, Black people, indigenous people, and other vulnerable communities. We are talking about a consequence in real life derived from the hate speech. We see this happening in Brazil, and we hope that we might understand and how this can happen in this election, especially with a local context in smaller towns that are more polarized. And there is this consequence of the real life with what is online. That is exactly what Minister Carmen Lucia mentioned of the lynching, of the consequences that we can see. There is a difficulty in moderating the campaigns on hate speech in the local media channels and alternates. And here we see much the focus of this municipal election having other forms of communication as well, and not only using social networks or news portals that are more accessed. There are local news portals, alternative news portals that make the moderation of content and the identification of the hate speech online more difficult. And also we understand that the campaigns that we observe online of hate speech are based on some specific narrative like health, education, public security. And in this project, Media and Democracy, or last year when we analyzed some social networks, we saw many narratives of hate speech against trans people, against people from the LGBT community, like health risks, public safety, and these topics are connected as well. As for disinformation, our approach was to understand what narratives can we expect in these elections. And here, as I said, a continuation of what we have already seen in the past years. The first is disinformation about integrity of elections, and we already see from now on campaigns where, and this is since 2018, because they make the integrity of the electoral process not legitimate. They question the competency of the courts, and we hope to find this disinformation too. We had mapped in the beginning of the year the disinformation about environmental issues. I believe that the tragedies with the floods in Rio Grande do Sul already shows us that here we have disinformation, a big flow of disinformation with the environmental issues, a lot of questions. And here our partner, Lupa, is doing a very good job, a lot of effort in making monitoring of these narratives, disinformation about public health. In addition to COVID, we also see the idea that it continues to observe. We hope a disinformation about the rights of freedom. We talked about this already, that our liberties are decreasing with public policies or strategies, or when we talk about legislating and regulating, there is this idea that we are going to start having censorship online, which is a false idea. So we hope to observe also this disinformation about the rights of liberty. Of course, the use of artificial intelligence. We are talking here about this international seminar focused on AI. And here, as a researcher of AI in the European Union, I forgot to make this, quote unquote, I come with this perspective of the European Union. The use of AI has been very big, especially concerning audio, because this is a big trend that we can expect for these elections too, because it has been something very strong. And we know many times that an audio becomes viral, somebody pretending to be somebody else. Now we have a model that makes the voice identical. So there is this risk of AI being used in the campaigns of disinformation, and we also see disinformation as a political strategy for some stakeholders. We have seen that false content become viral, and they provide engagement, and there are many stakeholders that use this strategy, knowing that they are disclosing false information, but they know that they will obtain the attention and they will be able to place an agenda on the public debate online. And then concerning the political advertising online, we are talking about political advertisements used to disclose information, manipulate information. There is also a risk that comes with the unequal access, like party funds that some candidates place much more resources to online political ads than others that make this content that's not organic reach more people with different agendas because of these inequalities. And here, once again, because of the context of the municipal elections, alternative media channels are difficult to control. And here I'm talking about influencers, YouTubers that can spread an ad on their pages, and it makes difficult. I'm going even faster with the recommendations because I didn't want to take much time. We want to hear Daniela. And here the main part that I would like to bring, it concerns why we talk about three actors. We talk about authority, so civil society, and digital platforms. In the European Union, there is an idea of the whole society approach, an approach that must include everybody in society. And there is no way, or not any way, of talking about this without addressing some specific actors and stakeholders. I'm going even faster through some points, but concerning hate speech, we know that the court has a focus on the use of this new legislation. So we recommend specialized training where the units have to understand the consequences of hate speech and this constant update of what we understand by hate speech. It's a term that moves forwards a lot, like the digital phenomenon, and we understand that the update is very important. As for the digital platforms, Professor Lillian mentioned this morning about the use of artificial intelligence to moderate content. And we focus on this as well. This moderation has to be specific to local content. And yes, it has to use methods and technologies. Then use AI together with people that understand about the regional context of the specific region. And here we are also talking about the adjustment of algorithms and systems of recommendation to limit bad content. As for civil society, we are talking about partnerships with online platforms to make the process of whistleblowing more agile. And also, according to the European context, the organization of civil society have a special role of literacy for the digital space. And this is a recommendation that we have here as well. As for this information for the electoral authorities, it's especially to monitor the impact of the initiatives created by the courts and the center that was created now, CIERG, also providing reports about efficacy and impact of this initiative because it caused an enormous impact in the international community. TSE is saying, as a sole example in the European Union, the alert system is something that the European Union would like to have, but they still don't. So to bring reports and transparency about the efficacy of this initiative is something that is very important for the international community, for the platforms, once again, to implement, advance the information of AI, to detect and signalize disinformation, and civil society, especially the fact checkers, when I'm talking about civil society, to continue their work that is without manipulation. And last but not least, political ads, of course, for the electoral authority to guarantee effective implementation of the actual resolution, considering good approaches, implementing pre-protocol of authorization for all ads. People from Rio did a study where they tried to pass some ads with bad content. They were all approved. So it's not only moderation, but after the content is in the platform, it's on the pre-approval also increase the transparency of algorithms and civil society focusing on education initiatives. The report is public with this QR code. You can access it. It is in English now, fully in English, but we are translating it and we will share with you all. This is a little bit of our work as civil society, what we do, with an effort to keep electoral integrity, but special to bring confirmation before the debate so that it becomes a debate with information and effective on how to maintain electoral integrity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We need to talk about technology, controlling technology, education, quality journalism, regulation, and accountability. It seems to me they are tools that are indispensable for us to address the topic that is actually bringing us together. Without further ado, I thank you very much for your learnings. And we have considerations to our international seminar. I'd like to invite Daniela Silva to honor us with her talk. She's an expert in strategic communication and technological policies, currently as head of public policies of WhatsApp in Brazil. You have the floor for 20 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Thank you to my panel colleagues that have preceded me. I'd like to thank for the invitation of TSE and the School of Communication, Media and Information of the Getúlio Vargas Foundation. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk a bit about the approach of WhatsApp on elections. I'm going to add to João Brandt's that talked about appropriate and balanced adjustments to avoid certain negative externalities of the information environment and tell you a bit about how we at WhatsApp have been dealing with some of those externalities. First thing I'd like to share with you is that the integrity approach of WhatsApp, this digital platform that is so important for public debate in Brazil today, is continuous. It is not restricted to electoral periods. It is based on learnings that are continuous from previous elections that we have very sound experience that I am a strong believer that will allow us to face the challenges that we have coming ahead. WhatsApp is gradually being enhanced to contain this information. And I'd like to share with you that the meta teams have been working relentlessly to fight against abusive behaviors. WhatsApp works along with Brazilian authorities to protect democracy and integrity of the electoral process. And I'm going to share with you some actions that are part of this effort. The first is the topic on reducing things going viral. This has been very much requested by our users to maintain the integrity and quality of chats that take place within WhatsApp as a private message app. The preventing viral features has been adopted over the years. The forwarding of messages, every message that is forwarded more than 5 times goes through because it goes over beyond this limit. This reduced by 70% viral messages that we see globally circulating on the WhatsApp digital platform today. I apologize because my notes flew away. They're back. On 2022, we implemented a new forwarding mechanism, meaning that one message that has been forwarded, even if it has been only once, could only be forwarded to a group at a time. And this friction added to the system it reduced by 20% the number of messages forwarded frequently, those that have come in signaled on WhatsApp by users when they are sent to groups within our platform. So we have also worked to fight against abuse on the platform. When we talk about automated behaviors, non-human behaviors that are not authorized by the terms of use of WhatsApp, we have an integrity system that also works continuously, that works to identify and ban this kind of behavior. And we also get to the elections now in 2024 with a very strong system fighting those types of abuse. To give you an idea, WhatsApp banishes globally about 8,000 accounts a month in Brazil and abroad. We fight such abuses outside the platform. So the Brazilian legislation has started banning, mass triggers since 2019. And this WhatsApp was a pioneer in 2020 to launch a whistleblowing channel along with TSC. This enables persons to signal accounts that were suspected of having mass triggers or posts. We work to identify and remove ads of companies that are promoting these ads or these trigger and also political triggers on posts. Well, we applied certain fines to a lot of companies. We had positive results in all cases. This means that those companies had to interrupt their offers and stop providing the services. More than that, we've been working to detect those non-official versions, those fake WhatsApp apps. Not only do they compromise the integrity of our digital platform, but also the privacy of users. There's another strategy in which we strongly believe, that's also been mentioned here by my co-panelists, is strengthening official sources of services and information within WhatsApp. I'll mention a case of collaboration with TSC, which is a pioneer case that has become an example for other countries, which is the official chatbot of TSE on WhatsApp. This is a system that is one of the most sophisticated in the world. At the previous election in 2022, it attained over 4.7 million users that registered in the first run, and it provides key services for the voters to provide official information regarding elections to all those users. Since the previous elections, it has been an unprecedented feature that is very important, enabling the user to share with a bot text, excerpt, media, image, video, and this will be checked based on fact-checking partners of the TSE, the Superior Electoral Court. This is an example in Brazil, an example to various countries where WhatsApp is also present. In addition, we are strengthening our partnerships with the regional electoral courts to benefit from the capillarity of WhatsApp in the country to promote more capillarity of official information regarding the electoral process. Another measure that we have been taking that is very much based on media education and empowerment of users that use our technologies is enabling the fact-checking on WhatsApp. We have a group of partnering agencies. There are 6 fact-checking agencies that have official accounts on WhatsApp. Through those accounts, they can not only disseminate news to users, but they can also get tips. They get those information tips as to which are the contents of great appeal that must be checked by them. We follow in collaboration with the electoral justice. WhatsApp has a legal team that is dedicated to the demands of electoral justice over this period, and this ensures us to fulfill all judicial orders in due time within the technical limitations of the tool. And I'd also like to talk about AI as well to bring to the topic of this panel. I'll tell you what about Meta, the owner of WhatsApp, saying that Meta has been leading and taking part of various initiatives in the industry, along with other industry leaders, to ensure that the contents that are produced or modified by AI be identified as such. From those alliances, every time some content is generated by AI using technology from one of those industry partners, and it is signals with a watermark and part of code of metadata, and it goes to social media or message apps, the content is identified from its origin. So Meta has been opening up and taking part of alliances with other members in our industry. In addition, and WhatsApp specifically, we offer whistleblowing mechanisms to users to send content, especially accounts that are disseminating illegal and fake contents. This also applies to contents that are generated by AI. We also believe that this partnership that we already have that is long-term and continuous, not only during electoral periods with the fact-checking agencies, will be also important at the moment to identify the deepfakes. Lastly, I'd like to say that we keep on holding campaigns against disinformation. We invest a lot in media information. WhatsApp has several guides and guidances talking about deepfake, how to identify, and when we keep on promoting critical thinking and the participation of our users in the public debate in the most complete and honest way. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the panelists, the people that are with us. I'd like that from this panel, I think what we have had is that it is key for us to develop technologies to diminish the risks of disinforming news, to have sufficient mechanisms to assess the models and understand the risks they may represent, especially when it comes to this new era of artificial intelligence. It is still fundamental to detect, identify, and confront the distribution of misleading contents on the platforms, especially to address once again quality information as a fundamental good for society. It is key. It's being very well stressed at the panel on this, the investment in education and training of people for digital civic life in this new arena. Especially, we must, in this effort of the whole of society, and here we have the opportunity of thanking the Superior Electoral Court. We must keep on talking about those topics, seeking possibilities, and signing a compact so that democracy survives and has prosperous future to all. Thank you very much, and I do hope you enjoy the next panel.
Concluídas, então, as exposições,
So once those excellent presentations are concluded, we thank you for the authorities that have been present at the panel. Thank you very much.
De apresentação, se for pela mesma ordem de chamada. Eu sempre. Pois bem, senhoras e senhores, prosseguindo então com nossas atividades.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, continuing with our activities, we would like to start our third day, which is the topic disinformation and the use of artificial intelligence in the election. Here we have on our panel as a chair of the panel, we have Leila Stedenberg, the General Director of DG of the European Commission, Hanati Nicolai, who will be participating virtually, the senior expert in elections of UNESCO, Albertina Peterberg, and the director of journalism of the site of fact-checking, Chequeado, in Argentina, Matias de Santo, and also the director of public policies of TikTok in Brazil, Fernando Gallo. Ladies and gentlemen, our chair, journalist and collaborator of FGV Comunicação here, Leila Sternberg, has the floor. Good afternoon. Once again, welcome. And once again, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to tell a few short stories, and not forgetting that we have only 1 hour for this panel because we are running late in time. So I would ask each of the participants to make their considerations in 15 minutes, but I am sure that you all have a lot of content and they are very sure of their messages and they will meet these requirements. In last year, we saw a Facebook and audio where the candidate, Pro Neto, tells the journalist that the party had bought votes from the Roman minority or the gypsies. It was false. In November, a video circulated in Argentina showing an image that seems to be of the Sergio Massa candidate taking coke. It was false. In January this year, in elections this year, hundreds of posts in YouTube, Instagram, with the title The Secret Story of Tsai Ing-wen, with the TV anchors whistleblowing the president and his party. And all these were fake. In January, New Hampshire, a voice similar to John Biden comes in an automatic election telling the Democrats that to vote in the primary in the states would favor the Republican Party. It was a fake recording. More recently, in the London Indian election, the video showed Narendra Modi dancing in the Bollywood style in face of a multitude of people, a false scene. Without talking about hundreds of other Indian videos that resuscitate dead politicians supporting this or that candidate, as was mentioned before. What all of these has is commonly used the Gen AI trying to affect the electoral process, as it was stated by the British magazine The Economist, Henry Diresh from the Observatory of the Internet and Stanford. The social networks make disinformation available for free. Now AI reduces almost to zero the cost of production of this disinformation. As the Minister Alexandre Moraes mentioned earlier today, it is a special of a boosting process for the process of disinformation. And half of the population of the planet this year is going to vote. After these considerations, I have the pleasure to turn the floor to Renate Nicolai. She is from BG Connect, and she was talking about from Brussels. I believe we already have her plug here. So be very welcome from Nicolai.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. Good afternoon, Brasilia, and a very good evening from Brussels, because here it's already a little later. It's really a pleasure for me to participate at, even if it's virtually only, at this important seminar treating such an important topic at the core of our democracies. And I would like to give you a little bit my perspective as a policymaker and also a regulator in this field. Indeed, 2024 is such a pivotal year for elections worldwide, as billions of citizens are going to go to the ballots. And also in the European Union, we are just a couple of weeks ahead of important European elections for the European Parliament in June, and we want to be prepared as much as possible for also the intensification of election-related deep fakes. And of course, the same applies in Brazil, I'm sure, for the upcoming municipal elections that will take place in October this year. As we have heard also from previous speakers in the course of the seminar, the advent of highly capable AI models poses novel threats to our democratic systems, and in particular to elections. We have heard and we are seeing that within seconds, generative AI tools have the capacity to produce disinformation at large scale, and it is more and more convincingly designed in a way that it's very hard to distinguish it from human creations. It has now become extremely easy and cheap to automatically generate highly convincing images, audio, and texts based on a simple prompt and a few mouse clicks. And we have seen how generative AI has already been used in recent elections to create highly convincing deepfakes also of politicians. So this creates huge avenues, of course, for malicious actors to spread disinformation, targeting political candidates, devising kind of societies, and also putting at risk the integrity of democratic processes. On the other hand, AI is at the same time can serve as an ally in this domain, because it can also equip us with advanced tools to combat disinformation. Because through the power of AI, we can also better than ever analyze vast quantities of data to identify and to expose malicious actors online. So one could imagine that AI could be used for automated fact-checking at scale, verifying the accuracy of statements and claims made online. So as always, technological disruptive evolutions such as AI that we are observing right now bear a lot of challenges, but also offer huge opportunities. Today is a very good day for me to talk about AI, because today the Council of the European Union has adopted the AI Act, our masterpiece of a regulatory framework to guide a digital transition and a human-centric AI. And of course, also the Council has today adopted conclusions to preserve the elections from foreign interference. So it's just to show you that it's very high on our mind. The AI Act will, of course, not immediately enter into force. It will become applicable only 2 years after the entry into force. But some of the prohibitions in it will apply already after 6 months. And while the rules on general purpose AI models will apply after 12 months. So, it will, enable us to deal with the risks from AI in the future in a more manifest way, because the system of the AI Act is a risk-based approach and also a kind of, very special attention paid to the very big AI models. So that means, for instance, that certain unacceptable AI practices, such as AI-enabled subliminal and other manipulative techniques distorting people's behavior, they are considered as a clear threat to people's fundamental rights, and they will be prohibited in the EU. Also, high-risk AI systems intended to influence the outcome of an election or the voting behavior of people will have to comply as high-risk application with stringent requirements before, so ex ante, they are put on the market and will be subject to regular assessments. And the AI Act tackles risks from general purpose AI models, including the most powerful ones that pose systemic risks. And here, besides the transparency obligations, providers of the most powerful models will also need to assess and to mitigate the systemic risks, including risks of misinformation and disinformation, and to bridge, because we have the AI Act only in 2 years' time. We have now already a challenge. We want to launch an AI Pact where we actually kind of advance some of the obligations, in particular the labeling and watermarking of synthetic information before. And we work on that also together with our international partners, notably the G7, but also in the context of the G20, so that we come to a better convergence also internationally on that. So much for the AI Act, which in the future will be an important kind of, context to deal with also the challenges that AI poses. But we are not starting in our work on disinformation only with the AI Act. We have already been following disinformation campaigns very vigilantly over the last years. I think especially COVID, but also, of course, in our case, the Russian-led war in Ukraine has led to a lot of disinformation campaigns that we had to deal with. And here, a lot of different tools come into play that we have built in Europe. In Europe, we have, in the digital transition, chosen also to create a very strong set of platform accountability rules. The main set of rules is the Digital Services Act in that regard. It's a kind of a global, it's a new standard to bring accountability in the platform reality. And it deals also with, the systemic risks that in particular the big platforms create for society. These systemic risks can be plentiful. It can be, mental health risk. It can be, but also risks to the civic discourse. So also the risks of disinformation and the integrity of electoral processes. Of course, when doing so, we are very mindful with our platform accountability rules that we are respecting the freedom of expression and of information on online platforms, that we are not censoring. So what we are doing is actually to kind of, supervise, in particular, the very large online platforms with more than 45 million users per month in the EU in a systemic way. So it's about a systemic risk assessment where we kind of, want the platforms to really kind of take a very accountable kind of approach to these things. This means, for instance, if the platform content moderation tools or the recommender systems that they use, which are driven by artificial intelligence, if they are found to amplify disinformation in a systemic way, then they will need to take appropriate mitigation measures to address these risks. So in that sense, the very large online platform have to regularly, publicly report on their risk assessment and on their risk mitigation measures. They will be also audited from an independent auditor in this sense. and of course supervised by the Commission, where we can use our supervision powers also to open investigations, and we have already done so. We have opened an investigation regarding X, regarding disinformation. We have very recently opened an investigation regarding Meta on certain kind of electoral processes issues as well. So other kind of elements in this kind of, platform accountability rulebook are that the user is more empowered in this rulebook to actually get more information about content moderation so that they can be better informed about why a certain content is recommended to them, who stands behind a certain advertisement. So I think that's an important part of our user empowerment. And then there are also very important transparency obligations in the Digital Services Act that go also into the academic world. So there will be, for instance, for vetted researchers, a possibility to get much more information from the platforms, because that will help also in the years to come when we are enforcing these new platform rules. With the help of the academic research, to kind of, go a little bit deeper into the analysis of the systemic risks of platforms and about this. When you take, for instance, an example like mental health, I think much more research is needed to really come to the bottom of the potential problem of a systemic risk on platforms for that. So it's really about, transparency, user empowerment, and risk assessment that it's built around. There are also very specific procedures for, certain specific risks, a risk protocol when we have a special crisis. That could, of course, happen if we have a massive kind of intervention also in an electoral process. We hope it won't come to that in the upcoming elections, but also that is foreseen. Since we, however, see these kind of upcoming European Parliament elections in particular as a very specific risk, we issued certain specific guidelines to the platforms to help them to increase their due diligence rules under the Digital Services Act even more, so that we are better protected for these elections. And here we already anticipated some of the AI Act obligations that will enter into force only in the future. For instance, the labeling of deepfakes, the watermarking, so that we have more transparency in this, to already suggest to the platforms to already apply that now. And we have already received kind of reactions from certain platforms that they are indeed kind of handling generative AI related content in a different way. We have put requests for information in our normal enforcement power to many of the platforms to get a little bit deeper into how they deal with the deepfakes. In particular, for instance, also to kind of understand a bit better hallucinations that are also an important aspect in this. In this context, internet connection, or can I? So I will. Yes. I hope you still.
It's okay. You can go. Yeah. You go further.
I'm so sorry. It seems it's not so very stable. So I was talking about the generative AI requests for information that we have dedicated to the platforms to get even more information. Just also to give you a bit of a flavor what we are doing, and on the basis of these rules, we have recently conducted a so-called tabletop exercise stress test, where we brought all the actors together. So it was the platforms, it was the academic world, it was the us as regulators, also at the national level, the regulators. We had also fact checkers, the civil society. We brought them all together and played through several scenarios that could come up. Worst case scenarios, really escalating from the simple one to the really, really heavy one, so that we could see what's the protocol that we use. How are we prepared to actually deal with these kind of situations? Who is calling who? How can we act so fast that it's important to act fast on the online reality, because it's the reality and the speed that makes the disinformation so harmful in the online reality. And this was welcomed by all the actors and showed that we really created by now an ecosystem of players in this kind of, fight on disinformation that we need to keep nurturing and activating to really be best prepared. We are not starting even with the regulatory framework we had in the years before, the so-called Code of Practice Against Disinformation. That was a self-regulatory approach that we negotiated with the platforms, but that they themselves kind of subscribed to. So it wasn't a regulatory action as such, but it helped to create these links between fact checkers and the platforms, between the media authorities and the platforms, between the kind of the general public to talk about that and the platform reality. And I think this has helped us to prepare also in a different way today in the European kind of debate, the general public for this kind of, potential disinformation. Because I think, to conclude, because I don't want to take too much of the time, disinformation will always stay in society. It's part of what will always happen. There will always be people who to deal with fake news, and we cannot negotiate that away. And we must also not censor that. But what is important is that we take this holistic approach to disinformation, the whole society approach, that we are, absolutely prepared on the analytical side to always analyze where the disinformation comes from. So, for instance, when it's kind of a foreign manipulated disinformation, which is very often the case at the moment in the geopolitical context we are in, to be clear about that and to have the analytic capacity to identify that, to be very clear on the kind of the channels to distribution of the disinformation. So that's the platform, to hold them accountable. So that's where we in Europe, with the Digital Services Act, with the AI Act, and building on the experience from the code of practice from before, we have quite some good tools. But then also to really work on the targets of disinformation, and that's the general public. That's us, the citizens. Because we need a critical society, we need strong media to kind of equip the society to always kind of, be ready and address the disinformation. And if that all comes together to kind of identify deep fakes because they are labeled, to kind of to bring in and debunk the kind of with authoritative sources, the obvious fake news, to have a debate about disinformation in society, then I think we can come closer to addressing this phenomenon in a meaningful way, without censoring, without kind of, limiting too much the freedom of speech, but also by educating everybody to kind of to check before they share, to kind of limit the possibilities for, disinformers to gain ground and to divide societies. It's not an easy task, because what we have observed also in the European Union in the years where we have been working on disinformation is that, the targets, always change. For instance, in the European Union, it's not that all disinformation campaigns are across all the member states. Sometimes the disinformation goes very targeted and really addresses vulnerabilities in a certain kind of, member state only, because that's where it can be very successful. And I think that's important to always kind of, showcase that and be ready for these kind of changing aspects. Maybe a last one, I told you that foreign interference is a big topic at the moment in the EU. But what we are observing is also that when, we are being open about this now, about foreign interference, we speak openly about it. The leaders speak about, for instance, Russian interference. But then, of course, we observe that then it's no longer clearly Russian interference, but then, it's more domestic proxies acting, in linked up with it and lined up with it. So it's an ever evolving target. It's a technique that will always kind of be used by malicious actors, and where we will have to keep on our toes. And to conclude, it's only possible to do it in a freedom of speech, respectful way if the whole society is involved and all the actors are taking their responsible steps. Thank you very much for your attention, and to kick off this panel debate. Thanks very much.
Dankeschön. Thank you. And have a good rest, because it's already quite late in Brussels. Dankeschön. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Até a próxima vez. E, sem dúvida nenhuma...
See you next time. No doubt, Europe is a reference for us in Brazil because of the DSA, because of the act that has just been approved this year regarding AI that is not in effect. We have to follow what Europe has been doing and will do regarding elections for the parliament. It is a moment that is naturally very important, considering the war taking place in Ukraine, all the misinformation posted by Russia that is very clear to her. A clear example of that was the episode on the supposed $1 million spent by Elena Zelenska in a jewelry store in New York, and all the process in which this information came about, and then it was replicated in apparent news websites in Africa, and then a certain DC Weekly, and then it ended up in the RT, Russian agency, and social media. And the way the dissemination of disinformation has been happening has changed. And this is very important. This is something that all stakeholders must learn, and it's something dynamic, and it keeps changing continuously. I'd like to turn over the floor to Matias de Sander, Director of Media of Chequeado, an NGO to contribute to the quality of public debate. Matias, please.
Hola, ahí está.
Hello.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Matias Di Santi, and I am the media first fact-checking organization of the region. Electoral of Brazil, the Fundación Getúlio Vargas. I don't know where is Amaro. And Agencia Lupa for inviting me. Lupa is one of our colleagues in this country with Comproba, Aofatos, and Estadao Verifica. Well, I'm here to tell you how we use the artificial intelligence, AI, pre-banking, and media literacy to reduce the spreading of disinformation in the Argentina's general election of 20 and 23. Next slide, please. But first, let's provide some content. Here, where is my presentation? My PPT? If you can put my PPT. Here. Yes. Now. Next one. Okay. Okay. No, the artificial intelligence. Okay, so next slide. Thank you, my friend. Well, but first, let's provide some context. As you can see on the PPT, for the first time, nearly 100 countries around the world will hold on elections over this year. And we know that electoral contexts are favorable for spreading fake news, because disinformers tend to use moments of public interest to spread disinformation, and they can have different motivations like money or political intention. As a result, these societies will be exposed to the impact of electoral disinformation. So we think our experience could give you some knowledge to the next elections that you will hold on in October here in Brazil. Next, Alvaro. Why are we concerned about this impact? Well, because disinformers aims above all to undermine the credibility of the electoral process, the candidate, the public authorities, and in last place, the democratic system. And the fact-checking organizations like Chequeado or like Agencia Lupa fights every day to strengthen the democratic system. It's our most important mission. Next. So, what we do at Chequeado to try to win this battle against disinformation? In first place, we develop products that make our daily fact-checking work more efficient, as we can verify more disinformation in a faster way. And we create a bot whose name is Chequeabot. We did this with the help of AI. Chequeabot has different functions. As you can see on the PPT, it can... Volver para atrás. Ahí está. No, para atrás. Para atrás, ahí está. Checkabot can automatically detect verified phrases in any speech, article, or content. Checkabot knows what is circulating on different social networks and chats at the same time to facilitate the disinformation monitoring process. In third place, it finds phrases on media from politicians and public figures to check. And finally, Checkabot transcribes videos and audios to text in different languages, like Portuguese. And it can even translate them. Now I want to share a video where you can see in a better way what I'm talking about. I don't know where is the video. Do you have the video? Video. I want to show a video. No. Well, okay. No video. I don't know if the video. Well, okay. Continue. Well, what else we do to win the fight? In first place, we talk about Checkabot. In second place, we have to talk pre-banking. Yes? Una para atrás. The pre-banking. Yes, pre-banking. Our experience shows us that this a great strategy warned the Argentina audience about misinformation that was spread in other years.
Fact-checking can save lives, but sometimes...
This is the video. Okay, I have to continue. We are talking about pre-banking. Our experience shows us that it's a great strategy warn the Argentina audience about misinformation that was spread in other years and in other countries, because this reduced the possibility of people believe in disinformations. Here you can see two examples of disinformations in Argentina and the United States. In the first case, an influencer did accusations of false ballots in Argentina. And in the second place, you can see broken machines in the United States presented as proof of fraud. These narratives are false, and we detected they were spread in other countries, and we have another examples of disinformation like this. Next slide, please. How we do pre-banking? We learn from the experience of journalists from other countries. We search for disinformation that was previously spread in Argentina elections. We identify waves of misinformation, for example, when many videos about the same topic go viral in short periods of time. And we receive requests from citizens through our WhatsApp chatbot. During the Argentina's general election of 20 and 23, we reached to receiving 200 requests daily about disinformation and electoral doubts. It was amazing, really, and we answered all of them with the help of our chatbot. I don't know if you have the video. Amaro, the video is okay. Look this video, please, play.
Fact-checking can save lives, but sometimes the race against misinformation can be unfair. Lies are easy and quick to create and send. Debunking and verification require more time and resources. This is why we created Checkabot, a platform to automate the process of data verification. Checkabot is for fact-checkers, journalists, and the general public. Checkabot can identify verifiable claims of dozens of news sites, social media networks, and official, presidential, and legislative speeches. It saves us a lot of time. Before Checkabot, it would take a couple of hours to know what was being said on only a few media outlets. Today, we can cover dozens of outlets in a few seconds all over the country to avoid focusing on the capital city only. Checkabot organizes and prioritizes the messages we receive from the public via WhatsApp so that it is easier and faster for us to decide what is important for our community. It transcribes YouTube videos and marks verifiable claims. It reviews information on social media so that journalists can see what has become viral and identify potential fact checks. Checkabot is a development from Chequeado, the first fact-checking organization in Latin America that has over 10 years of experience and the founder of Latam Chequea, a network of more than 35 organizations that has published more than 3,500 articles against COVID misinfo during 2020. Checkabot makes the race against misinformation fairer, because with the right information, we can make better decisions. And now we're spreading this across the region.
Perfect. What a lucky, because I that we can see the video because it's another form to be the Chequeabot functions. Okay, so we talk about Chequeabot. In second place, we talk about pre-banking, and in last place, we have to talk about another strategy to counter disinformation that we use in Chequeado. We have an education program. Next slide. Yes, this one. We have an education program where we work teaching tools of media and information literacy. The objective is helping develop critical thinking and knowledge so people, above all teenagers, can identify false content by themselves. We name this media literacy, or AMI, alfabetización mediática informacional in Spanish. We think that is the better way to fight against the disinformation created with AI, for example, because the big risk with this type of disinformation is that we stop believing in anything. I think this is the big risk. This type of disinformation is that we stop believing in anything. So we teach how to use tools to identify small details that might tell something was created by AI, and we work with other sources that allow us to verify the information in an independent way. I know that everything sounds great, but you want to see these tools. So to end, you can find our tool scanning the QR. If you want, you can scan this QR, this one. You can find different tools to verify these informations created with artificial intelligence. Well, next one. Well, that's all. Thank you for listening. My mail is there, mdisanti@chequeado.com. So write me if you want more information about Chequeado. Mucho obrigado.
Muchísimas gracias. Obrigada.
Thank you very much. You two are from Argentina, right?
I turn the floor to Albertina Peter Bach. Very interesting, this work of Chequeado. We're not acquainted with this work that you do, trying to reinvent what other people are doing, what kind of disinformation already arrived at different countries. Very interesting. I believe Brazil could try and be in one of those lists too. So I turn the floor to Albertina, expert in elections and a journalist in the UNESCO. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much to the Tribunal and the Fundação Getúlio Vargas for organizing this event. I'm very proud of being here representing UNESCO. And we have addressed the topic of disinformation, artificial intelligence, democracy, elections from many perspectives. And I want to contribute at the very end of this long day with a lot of concepts in our minds, just with some important points from the point of view of the organization which I'm representing today. This is that UNESCO, you must know, is the UN agency mandated to achieve peacemaking through international cooperation in the fields of education, science, culture, communication, and information. And in this mandate, it includes to protect the free flow of information. So suddenly for UNESCO, we've been discussing these issues of disinformation for a very long time, particularly from the point of view of journalism, culture, and communications. But with the arrival of the digital age, we suddenly found ourselves dealing with all these new technical aspects of the way that information is being distributed and produced. And this is important to understand that for us, freedom of expression is a very important human right, and it implies not only expressing ourselves, but also seeking, receiving, and imparting information. So it has three pillars. It's not only saying what we want to say, but it's also about the information we're accessing. The need to know when this information is real, is not real, is false, is true. So, and also impart information. So there are many pillars for one right. And we have mentioned many challenges, and I will just focus on some of these challenges because we don't have much time, but also I think because they are very important from the point of view of UNESCO. And one is that we were just recently mentioning when we were talking about the DSA, that it's the difficulty of the opacity of AI algorithms. That means the difficulty in determining also the liability of the decisions made by AI systems. And this is not trivial because these AI systems might affect human rights. And harms can occur, as we've been describing during the whole day, and establishing the responsibility for these harms may trigger significant challenges. Biased information might thrive, affecting the right to freedom of expression in three pillars, as I mentioned, and they are not so evident. We were talking today about very evident things. Let me share with you two small, very trivial anecdotes. I was sharing it with my colleague here today during lunch. And it's that in the middle of a workshop that we did in UNESCO for the ChatGTP application a couple of months ago, we asked the ChatGTP why the Sacré-Cœur, that is a beautiful church in the middle of Paris, that is called El Sagrado Corazón de Paris, was built in Montmartre. And ChatGTP gave us back a beautiful explanation of why the religion, spirituality, and the importance of overlooking the city. And it happened to be that I knew why the church, this particular church, had built in this particular place, because I used to live there in the area nearby, and I knew that it was a political decision following the communal revolts of the 19th century, and it was more a political stance than any other spiritual, religious, whatever. So this anecdote is very trivial. It doesn't say much, but the response that ChatGTP gave us that day was very logical. It sounded really okay. Yeah, why not? A church, a spiritual, religion. Well, but in fact, it was totally wrong. And that's the problem. Many people, many young people today, many children, even I know that because of my daughters, I have children that are 16, well, no longer children, they are adults. They are asking ChatGTP, okay, what is the electoral, what are we going to vote, ChatGTP, or how this system works, or these children are getting, or young people, or whoever is asking ChatGTP is asking for just trivial civic voter education information, and they might get whatever that doesn't look so false. It doesn't look that is not real. Doesn't look that is no. So on the top of what we were talking just now about fact-checking the news, we will have to start fact-checking the artificial intelligence contents, because that's also we need to know if it's true or not. And this is the first anecdote. The second anecdote, just to see how it affects us at everyday level and why we are so worried in UNESCO, is that we do many massive open online courses in UNESCO. You might have participated. I know that I have crossed people that even recognize me for some of these MOOCs. And in these MOOCs, we always ask the participants to share information. We ask them questions, and they should respond that in the chats. And 2 years ago, in 2022, the responses were a little bit chaotic, but you could see that people were telling really their minds. There were, maybe it was not super well written, maybe it was not super coherent, but there were very different ideas. This time, we noticed that 50% of the answers were generated by ChatGPT. And this, again, is not a trivial information. We think that this amalgam of just using artificial intelligence to produce content, it's impoverishing the environment. It's just reducing plurality, silencing voices. It's impoverishing from the point of view of perspectives. So, and this brings us to a very important word, ethics. We've been talking about transparency, but we also need to talk about ethics. And the ethics behind the human rights, safeguarding human rights, and deployment of the use of AI tools, also for including the administration of electoral justice, for instance, needs to be very, very well reviewed and very well framed. So I had prepared a long presentation. I won't go through everything, but just to say that for UNESCO perspective, we're working in some vectors of some areas that, of course, dialogue and capacity building, trainings, regulation and co-regulation. We're also working with journalists, we're working with fact-checking organizations, media and information literacy, because the children that today are glued to TikTok are going to be the voters of tomorrow. So we need to think on how we're going to educate our citizens that are going to vote and are going to keep up with our democracies in the next generation. And we also work with public information campaigns, and we try to also support the development of AI tools that support also fact-checking organizations. So as you see, we are not going to reinvent the wheel, but the wheel is going to be more expensive because we are dealing with very, very wealthy platforms, the new digital kids on the block are very wealthy, and they're spending a lot of resources in their marketing, making money, whatever, with data mining and all that. So it's going to be the same thing, training, public information, media literacy, nothing new, but we are going to increase resources. Resources mean not only money, it's time. Time is lacking. It's human resources. We need people that know how to use the systems and need to speak this language. And we need also political will. And of course, we need financial resources. So say that we believe that there is the last word I want to say, there is false debate about freedom of expression against putting limits to whatever is happening, illegal content or harmful content online. We think and we are convinced that we can protect freedom of expression and electoral integrity without affecting anyone in a way that it's according to human rights. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Precisamos, entre outras coisas, de educação midiática, precisamos da inteligência artificial.
Among other things, we need media as fact-checking, as chequeado. One time, the apparent news websites that posted the story on Ms. Zelenska were created by AI with mixed contents, truthful news, disinformation, and text generated by AI. That is, last but not least, Fernando Gallo, Director of Public Policies at TikTok Brazil. TikTok many times is pointed as a villain more than a good guy in the story because of the opacity, etc., etc. But it's very important to include in the platforms in this conversation. My 15-year-old daughter doesn't live without TikTok, for example. You know, it's a primary item at home. Good afternoon, Leila, colleagues of the panel, everyone present, those following us remotely. I'm going to do my best to show that it is not a villain. I am Fernando Gallo, Director of Public Policies at TikTok here in Brazil. And for a decade approximately, I've been working in the intersection between technology and public policy. I'd like to thank the Superior Electoral Court and Getulio Vargas Foundation for the invitation and take part in this important debate. Since TikTok is a platform that is a bit newer, not everybody is familiar with our approach, I'd like to very briefly present TikTok and its uniqueness, because I believe this will help set a context to my comment and the place where I come from. And then I'm going to talk about our work regarding AI, synthetic media, manipulated one elections, and of course, their intersections. And lastly, I'm going to talk about an important announcement of AI that we made 10 days ago. To present TikTok, the company, very briefly to say that we are a new company that is only 6 years old. We've been working from an approach of collaboration, be it with governments, civil society, regulators, with academia. We want to be partners in the construction of solutions for public problems that are caused by the very technological development, including helping to build regulation. The TikTok platform, in turn, is an entertainment platform whose mission is to inspire creativity and bring joy. Over 1 billion people use our platform worldwide, and we are aware of the fact that to have this community creating in an authentic way, the community must feel safe. And this is why we are always working towards to proactively developing tools and features, thinking about security within TikTok and civic events like elections. This is even more important. News and policy, whilst they take up a space that is small percentage of the contents in TikTok, they may, of course, have greater impact in periods of elections. That we've been working to provide a balance between allowing discussions on elections and whilst we try to seek to have a platform that is used to unite people, not dividing them. In addition to AI, that I'm going to address shortly, I'd like to highlight 2 points of our approach regarding elections that are differential items of TikTok. We do not allow paid political publicity. It was the only platform to do that, actually. We believe that this does not suit the experience that people that use TikTok have within the platform. It's an entertainment platform. And from the very beginning, we made the decision of not making money with politics and elections in our platform. The second point is our approach of content moderation regarding disinformation on elections. We have a specific policy on disinformation related to elections, and it vetoes disinformation on electoral civic processes, regardless of the intention of those that created the content. And our moderation option is removing contents and accounts that violate our rules and not labeling. We have an approach of moderating content that is stringent for this kind of content. In the 2012 elections, just due to violation of election-based policy, we removed 66,020 videos. We had other videos, other contents that are threat to, promoting violence, 66,020 proactive videos against 222 URLs that we removed through judicial determination. To make it very clear that TikTok has rules and we enforce those rules in a diligent way and a proactive way. I'm going to get to the AI and synthetic and manipulated media in TikTok. We welcome creativity that AI promotes and other technologies will enable. And we know that AI may turn more difficult differentiating fact from fiction, bringing risks to society and individuals. We have a synthetic media policy in our guidelines in the community since 2020. In April 2023, we started enforcing updates or implementing updates that want to boost creativity of people, and whilst we provide an additional context for people that use TikTok on the contents they view. We do not allow synthetic media that contains similarity of any real private person or anyone under 18 years of age. We do not allow synthetic media on public figures if the content is used for endorsement or violating any policy, and we do have expanded our options of whistleblowing, of disinformation, having a dedicated channel so that people can report synthetic media to us that they believe violate our rules, and this was done early this year. Again, it is not any kind of synthetic media that we ban, but any content loaded or posted on TikTok have to follow our rules, and we ban in our disinformation policy any inaccurate, deceitful, or fake content that may cause significant damage to individuals or society, including material that has been edited, cut, or combined in such a way that may deceive a person on events of the real world. And we remove any content that violate our guidelines of community, regardless whether it's being changed with AI. This includes policies on personification, disinformation, and hate speech. To conclude, I'd like to talk about the partnership and tell you about the announcement we made 10 days ago. The partnership is that in February this year, 2024, we joined the 19 main technology companies signing a new commitment of fighting deceitful electoral content generated by AI. These commitments is related to our continuous work to generate transparency, AI, fight disinformation, and protecting elections globally. The announcement that we made 10 days ago, TikTok is starting to label automatically AI-generated contents when they are posted from certain platforms, for example, the OpenAI platforms, Adobe, including Photoshop, and other many platforms that are signatories of the C2PA. I'm going to talk about it shortly. We were the first platform to enable people that use the server to use a tool to classify the content, to add a label to their contents to signal that it is AI-generated content. We started demanding that creators label the contents that contain images, audio, and videos that are realistic. This may be done through a label or subtitle, synthetic, fake, non-real, or changed. This tool has been used by over 37 million creators since the last quarter last year. Since the 9th, we are automatically labeling AI-generated content, not only offering the creators this possibility of doing that, but we also do that automatically. Contents that have been generated by other platforms, again, that are part of this coalition to have provenance and authenticity of content of C2PA. There is a technology called content credentials that fundamentally generates metadata that enables all participating companies of this coalition that to understand that it's being AI generated, and this automatically, when there is an upload of this material on TikTok, it is automatically labeled. This feature started to be implemented 10 days ago in images and videos, and it shortly will be on audio contents. And in the next few months, we'll start doing the opposite. So putting content credentials on the contents posted on our platform, just as a TikTok content travels outside TikTok, this can be done via downloading And other platforms should also be able to understand that the content has been generated with editing tools, or also knowing when, how, and when the content has been created and edited. Likewise, the same platforms will be able to label that automatically. We keep on working, if we're evolving our action as this topic evolves in our industry. This is it. Thank you very much. I am available.
Thank you very much. We did it on time. We are closing 2 minutes before our deadline because there will be another transmission where the team will have to join. I thank you very much for participation, Fernando Gallo, Matias, Albertina, Renato, who's not longer with us. I'm sure it was a very good discussion. I hope it has been, and I invite you all to return tomorrow morning for the second day of this seminar that is so timely with a topic that is dear to our heart here in Brazil and